Well, welcome everybody to this our first webinar on the topic of letting go of things in 2020. 2020 has been a rather challenging year for all of us, and everybody has been affected in one way or another. And so what I want to do is I want to make sure that we get into 2021 with a more free spirit, hopefully a more exciting spirit, and leave all the things that may have held us back in 2020 and even before, to let those things go behind. As you know, my name is Reinhard Klett, and I'm a certified high performance coach. And also want to really commend you all for joining this morning or this afternoon, wherever you're at. This is really exciting because what you're demonstrating is that you are interested in making the next year a better year, and that you are personally interested in developing and growing personally. And you know, that is just so exciting to have that, because that's the greatest desire and the greatest joy that we have as certified high performance coaches, is to see people grow and to take personal development seriously, to bring their whole life to another level. Now, what I want to do is during these 4 days, these 1-hour seminars during these 4 days, is sharing with you my story on how letting go saved my life. That is something that was an experience that I had 30 years ago. I was a student pilot in Southern California, and without going into a whole lot of detail about what happened, is sufficient to say that I was flying over Simi Valley. I was doing approach to landing stall recovery during my third solo flight. And I prepared everything for the maneuver. You have to be practicing this sort of fairly high above the ground, which was 2,500 feet, where you have some room for recovery if something doesn't go quite well. But when you do an approach to landing, that's one of the most dangerous things, because you're close to the ground and there's not much room for recovery if something goes wrong. So I practice this, and I do everything to slow down the plane, try to stall the plane, and then try to recover. But the plane didn't stall like it should have, or how I expected it. My left wing dropped before the right wing dropped. And I got into what they call a graveyard spiral. The earth was spinning in front of me like a disc. The altimeter was showing a very rapid descent. And I was thinking, okay, these are going to be the last few seconds of my life. I had this very sinking feeling. I had no idea on how to get out of this, because this is not part of private pilot training. Only flight instructors get trained on how to get out of this. So after I tried everything with the controls, I realized there was nothing I could do. So I finally let go of all the controls, took my hands off the wheel, my feet off the pedals, and said, God, take this plane. And in an instant, after dropping 1,000 feet out of the sky, I came out of it. Came to a straight and level flight at 1,500 feet above the ground. Had I held on to the controls any longer, I would have run myself right into the ground. So what happened is, as you can imagine, I've shared this story with people over the years, and several people told me, oh, this really helps me. It helps me to realize that because there's something in my life that I need to let go of. And over the years, people have shared these things that they realized they had to let go of. And so eventually I started to write a book. Before I even became a coach, I started to write a book. And so the title of the book is Letting Go Saved My Life, in which I write the introductory chapter, and then I have 16 other chapters in which I talk about different topics and things that we need to let go of. And so this book is basically the sort of the foundation for our seminar. And why am I, as a high performance coach, talk about letting go? Well, to me, the way it works is when we go through our high performance coaching training, and then we work with our coaches on high performance habits. That to me is like stepping on the gas. But when you let go of things that hold you back, it's like taking your foot off the brake first. That's why I want to introduce this. You know, at the end of the year, encouraging everybody basically to take their foot off the brake. So in the new year 2021, they can step on the gas and move forward. You know, I had an experience where I had a chainsaw stolen and I had to buy a new one. And we moved to another state, and it was the first time that I had to cut hardwood. And it was so difficult to cut hardwood with this new chainsaw. I was revving the engine like crazy, and it just would move very, very slowly, and was heating up. And I said, what's going on here? Took it to the dealership, and the dealer said, you know what? You got the brake on. Which, I realized then in my old chainsaw, if you had the brake on, it wouldn't move at all, period. But on this one, it would still move a little bit, but it didn't get too far. So to me, it's very important that we first let go of the brake and then apply the gas, because we can waste a lot of energy and get very frustrated and tired and worn out if we don't let go first of the things, let go of the brake and let go of the things that are holding us back. So that's the reason why I wanted to pick that topic. So what I want to talk about now, after telling you the story a little bit, the first chapter, the first couple of chapters, and that is actually letting go of control. And because that's the first chapter, because letting go of control is actually what saved my life, when I let go of those controls of that airplane. But there's many other things in life where we need to let go of control. And I'm talking about a story where my wife and I went in together with our young son. He was only 1.5 at the time. We were traveling down from Tennessee to Florida, and we had a flight leaving from Knoxville had to change planes then in Atlanta, Georgia, and then fly down to the Gulf Coast. And as we were leaving our subdivision in Morristown, which is about an hour's drive away from Knoxville, my wife was looking at the papers and she said, you know what, I just realized the time that we were supposed to that I thought we were supposed to leave Knoxville is the time we're actually going to land in Atlanta. So I really realized then, there's no way we're going to make it. And I thought, okay, I could get very upset about the situation, but it wouldn't change a thing. It wouldn't get us to the airport any faster. So I realized in a way that this was a test for me on how I would respond to the situation and how I would deal with the frustration and how I would treat my wife in the process, who I thought, was the guilty one here, who caused us this problem. So I said, okay, well, let's just call the airline and say we're not gonna make that flight. And so by the time we got to the airport in Knoxville, sure enough, that flight was gone. But there was another flight not long after that, and so they were able to rebook us onto that. But when they cancel you on if you cancel your first leg, they cancel all the other legs afterwards. So we were bumped off that flight from Georgia to Florida as well. And but anyway, we got on that flight to Atlanta, and guess what? That plane to Florida was still there, but it was overbooked. And so it was already full, almost full. I talked to the flight attendant at the counter, at the check-in counter, and talked to her, asked her what she could do for us. Very calmly, tried to be very gracious about it, even though I was kind of nervous, as you can imagine. And I said, well, we have this young kid, and if we don't make this flight, we're not going to be down in Florida this evening, and it's going to be tough for us with this baby. Guess what? We were the last 3 people to get onto that flight. So in the end, we ended up landing in Florida at the same time we were originally scheduled to land. So that was a situation where I realized just staying calm made it possible. Had I what would it have served me if I got all upset? What would it have served me if I did what I have observed a lot of other people do sometimes when they talk to flight attendants and they get really nervous or they become very demanding and become rude and so on. Had I been rude to that flight attendant, I'm convinced she would not have put us on that flight. So that's one of another situation where I can say, okay, I tried not to control the situation or overly take charge of the situation in the sense that I tried to force anything. It was a situation where I said, okay, my number one job here is to respond in the proper way. And then it's a test. And am I passing that test? And that's more important than always accomplishing what we want to accomplish. So the question is then, what is it maybe in your life that you may be trying to control, or where you may have controlled a situation in your life and you have made matters only worse? Is there something you want to share with us on that? I mean, as you know, for me, had I held on to the controls of that airplane, I would have run right into the ground. It would not have saved me at all.
Yeah, thank you. That was really powerful what you shared. You know, for me, control is really interesting because from my perspective, I used to think that if I did not continue to take control or to be assertive, that was a sign of weakness. But what I was actually doing was I was shutting out other people from participating, which was not a good tactic. And so it's interesting because it's still control, but now I control my response. I control how I wait for the other person to kind of to come into the dialogue. I'm inviting people in, and I also see it as a form of control, but it's a different one. It's not a, it's more of a passive control. And that's one of the lessons that I've been trying to teach myself or unteach myself currently. But thank you for sharing that. That was an incredible story.
That's awesome. And that is really boils down to this. Yes, we can control, but we control those things which are within our control. Mm-hmm. And as you said, that is always our that is our responsibility to control our response to a situation. And that's awesome. You know, I remember one time I tried to. Sometimes we control things about finances, for example. I was really very sort of tight. And one time I was investing in real estate. We had a property and I wanted to cut the grass myself, save the $50 and not spend it on the landscape people. And guess what? I stepped into a hole and twisted my ankle so hard that the fibula fractured. And so saving those $50 being trying to control my spending so much that those were the most expensive $50 I ever saved, as you can imagine when you break your leg. So yeah, it can really go bad. Have you had a situation where you have let go of control and things just worked out fine?
Yes, actually I have. So there's, I manage a fabulous team of people, and, you know, I would come to our meetings with an agenda and everything prepared. And the one thing that I negated to do was to relinquish control of the meeting to let someone else lead it, or to let someone else have a say in how that might handle. And so I pretty much came one day and I said, hey, everyone, let's do a share. And they were like, oh, well, what are our topics for today? And I said, I don't know. What are our topics for today? And I kind of just let all of it go. And the meeting turned out to be, it's like my favorite meeting of the week. And everyone now I find is dropping in all of their agenda items and they're putting their discussion points in. But once again, I just relinquished it all because I just felt like it was contrived, or it was just too forced. And once I did that, it really just opened up into a place of share, of gratitude, of just it's such a more productive place. And then even there are times where, you know, if everyone just drops in their information, they're just like, okay, we're good for today. And we pretty much will get on camera just to say hi, which is a wonderful feeling. So a great example for me of recently having just letting control go for how I thought things might need to be led. And I'm
That's
finding that it's a lot more fulfilling. And it's just fulfilling for me, but also for the rest of my teammates.
that's awesome. That's awesome. And let me guess, you probably not only felt that the meeting itself was so much more enjoyable, what happened afterwards probably was different, the engagement of the people.
The engagement was wonderful. It just set up such more, like there's so much more trust within the group, and there's a lot more sharing within the group. And one of the things that you don't realize sometimes is that if your agenda is so controlled, that there's little opportunity for anyone else to kind of give. And so they'll just become passive. And yeah, this was a great example of just letting it go. I've done that in several other instances, and the responses are great. But when, you know, like previously, I thought that was my way of contributing. And it's more not about what I'm doing, it's about what I'm not doing. That's getting the result.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. That's great. And that is, I have found so much the case, especially in the corporate world. Also, when we do corporate coaching, to remind people that people support what they create.
Mm-hmm.
And if they are part of it, if they are part of the agenda, if they share with you what needs to be addressed, they see things that the leader himself doesn't see.
Mm-hmm.
And then they say, okay, this is something I would like to solve. This is a problem I would like to solve. Can we address this? And then when they come up with the ideas, then it's awesome. Um, I have worked for different corporations, and I have felt whenever I had a boss that was micromanaging, I felt a little less engaged and more frustrated. But when I had bosses that would sort of relinquish total control, just made suggestions and provided guidance and so on, I just felt a lot more fulfilled, and I was a lot more engaged, and there was no need to micromanage me. So yeah, it's awesome. That is awesome. That's great. Are there situations right now in your life when it would be best for you to just let go of control?
Yes, plenty of them. So I'm currently, during this time that we have, with the pandemic, we have a lot more time in the house. So we started a couple of projects.
Mhm.
And so, as you know, collaborating with your spouse is always an interesting way to go about things. What I've learned is that I feel that there's many ways that you can get there to solve a problem, and it doesn't necessarily have to be my way. So I pretty much, when we're addressing, you know, we're upstairs and we're trying to fix the floor, and you know, how do you think we should do this? And I'm just like, well, I'm open. What do you think we should do? I said, I watched a YouTube video. I'm pretty limited on what I know, but what do you think? Do you think that we can handle this together? And there's a lot more give and take around how the conversation goes, of how we might get there. And it's not necessarily, doesn't need to be led specifically by me. I'm actually very comfortable with like, great, take it, you know,
Yeah.
and participating in the way that I can. I still do struggle with, am I contributing enough? And so that's a reoccurring theme for me, just which is why my control in the, you know, my control I'll call them issues, I suppose, have they resurface themselves each time. But now I'm aware of it and I can see it and I call it for what it is. But yeah, it's been really interesting doing the projects together. And it's been really fulfilling because it's the give and take in the situation.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I think what has probably helped you as well, and you tell me, but uh, having gone through the coaching training probably
Hmm.
has made a huge difference because the tendency is always, and for me, I mean, I'm 62 years old now. The tendency is, you have a lot of life experience. You want to give people advice, and
Hmm.
you want to consult them, and but that's not the job of a coach.
That's right.
Uh, the coach is trying to help the client to find the answers themselves. As we said, people support what they create,
That is
and
correct.
and if the mind itself is engaged in developing the answers, then it's much more likely that we follow through with it as well,
Hmm.
and that we find the best solutions because who knows our situation better than we ourselves? A coach
That's right.
who's halfway around the world possibly, doesn't know our situation as much, but he can help you to just pull it out of you and to ask the questions that you may be afraid to ask yourself, and then you move
That's true.
forward. Yeah, that's
That's
that's great. Um, what would I tell? And another question that I have, and that's in my book, by the way, for those who haven't seen this book, Letting Go Saved My Life. At the end of each chapter, I have these coaching style questions and some room to journal, so you can examine the situation yourself, or go through your mind with it a little bit and find out where you can possibly let go, or how you could let go, or what's holding you back. And so one of the questions here is, what would I tell myself in the future when I find myself in a stressful or frustrating situation? And there
um,
again, it's about control.
I typically tell myself it's part of it. This is all part of it. Go with it. Let's explore it. Let's look at this from a curiosity standpoint, not from a standpoint of what I may know. It's what I might learn and what my opportunity might be. And that's typically how I address most things nowadays, especially with, things take longer. There's a lot more red tape around getting what used to take maybe 15, 20 minutes to do. It could take an hour. You may have to follow up 3 or 4 times because the circumstances are just so different nowadays. But I always say, hey, this is part of it. Let's explore it.
Right. And the extra measures that we may have to take in some areas, we may find the time now because we don't have to commute anymore, many of us, and do certain things. We do certain things from home, so
Mhm.
we can save time. And yes, I mean, what has helped me, quite frankly, is this book, and no pun intended, but it was by Viktor Frankl, Man's
Mm.
Search for Meaning. Uh, for those who don't know, he's a psychologist or psychiatrist actually from Vienna, a Jewish psychiatrist who was in the concentration camps, in 4 or 5 concentration camps during the Nazi regime. And he actually survived. And some of the people that he worked with as a psychiatrist while he was in concentration camps survived as well. And this is what he told them, that it did not really matter what we expected from life, but rather what life expected from us.
Mm.
So, in other words, when I get into a situation that is challenging, I mean, a relatively minor situation, of course, was when on that trip to the airport there that I told you about earlier. What I tell myself, okay, what am I expected to do in this situation? How
Mhm.
would my best self respond to this situation?
Mhm.
That's really what matters. That's what I have within my control, and that shifts things a lot. And as you were saying, if we look at all those challenges or frustrations as learning opportunities, rather than just things that are in the way, that's also an awesome approach, and that helps us to be in a higher level, higher state of mind or consciousness in a way. When you think about frustration, it's just using up energy that is not getting us anywhere. As an example, I'm thinking when we're sitting in a traffic jam for an hour, in a 10-mile, traffic jam or something like that for an hour, we're not going anywhere, but we can potentially spend a lot of energy by being frustrated and pounding on the wheel and why is this not moving or whatever, but it's not serving us in any way. So yeah, on how we respond is really important. And so in the end, we should always ask, or I try to always ask myself, what would be the best response if I reacted rationally and in faith that things will work out. And also that I listen to that still small voice inside of me. I have thought for a long time that women had much more intuition than men, because especially with my wife, has extremely good intuition. She knew the day we met, we'd get married. It took me a couple of weeks to realize that, but that's an aside. But I came to the realization that we men have just as much intuition, but we just don't. We think we have to overthink it. We think we have to rationalize everything. And so we ignore that still small voice. We ignore the intuition. So that's one thing I think that we should always do in difficult situations. Just listen to that still small voice. Maybe you're supposed to learn something. Great. So this takes us to the next chapter, actually. We're letting go of fears and worries. Those are the things that are that come up in a lot of discussions that I've had in seminars when I talked about this topic. And of course, there are physical dangers, and we respond to them responsibly. That's for sure. I remember, when I was a young man, I spent some time in Southern Africa, and I was driving one time through this national park, and there were 35 elephants crossing the street in front of me. It was kind of a scary situation. So there are potentially real dangers, and we have to be aware of them, physical dangers. And it's just like with the coronavirus. Yes, there's a high likelihood that we will get infected with it, but again, there it's something. What do we do that is within our control? We can be extremely scared. Like I remember a friend of mine, his wife was so scared she wouldn't even leave the house at all, and that is not very helpful. You don't get the sunshine, you don't get the exercise, and then it lowers your immune response, and then that makes you even more vulnerable. So, I mean, for example, what I said, okay, it's very likely that eventually I will get it, and I did get it, but because I was focusing on maintaining really good health and boosting my immune system, I was able to get over it very quickly with very minor symptoms. So again, just another situation where we just control what we can control, not get overly frustrated or scared about situations that are outside of our control. But a lot of fears and worries that we have are not really related to physical dangers. Most of them are not. When you think about it, for example, fear of public speaking, some people feel that more than almost anything else. And why is that? Why are we so afraid of public speaking? Typically, we are worried about what other people think of us, what kind of an impression we leave. And what I learned from a speech instructor, and there was really, really good advice. He said, when you give a talk and you're nervous, you're usually nervous because you're very self-conscious. You want to leave a good impression. Now just shift your focus. Shift your focus from leaving an impression to serving the audience. Just give what you have to give to the audience. Do your best to provide them with some value. And then if technically not everything works out so smoothly or whatever, it doesn't matter. The main purpose for you to talk to them is to provide them with some value. And if you do that, if you focus on that, how can I serve this this audience? Then you're not focused on yourself anymore. You're focused on service. You're focused on loving somebody. And you may be familiar with the phrase, perfect love casts out fear. So do we serve love or do we serve fear? That's one way of looking at things when we think about overcoming our fears and worries. And the issue with worries, I mean, worry is just another form of fear, I guess, is we focus on the problem so much and it keeps us from focusing or putting our mind to the solution. And so we keep worrying, and it's just, again, wasted energy. It's really self-sabotage when you think about it. And that's one reason why we need to find ways to overcome worry, because again, it's not serving us. Trying to think about it rationally. Rationally, there's no point in worrying. We know it's not going to serve us. We know it's not going to produce anything. And another point is, if we can face our fears, that's one thing that I have experienced when we do have fears, that we face them head on. I was thinking about, for example, when we are worried about things, when we have anxiety about financial things. And maybe we have a little bit of time here to go over a few slides on what happens in our minds when we are fearful, and what the consequences of that is. Let's see here that I can share. I'm going to share the screen. Oops. I'm finding it. Share the screen. This one. Can you see the screen with a chart?
Yes, I can see it.
Great. Okay, great. So basically what this is showing, this graph is showing a little bit for what happens in where our feelings come from. Typically, what we have certain beliefs, whether they're positive or negative beliefs, that generate questions. If we have negative beliefs, they typically generate disempowering questions or negative questions, and then they generate negative thoughts, and those in turn then make us feel bad or give us negative feelings. And when we have negative feelings, disempowering feelings, we take not very productive good action, and the results are not great, and then that reinforces our negative beliefs. So here is an example of, like, if we have false beliefs, and I'm going to talk about an example in a minute. We have false beliefs. Again, we add bad questions, generates negative thoughts, negative feelings. The negative feelings lead to bad actions, poor results, and then it reinforce the false beliefs. For me, it's been helpful to sort of put it on a chart to go through that. But on the other hand, if we have true beliefs, then we ask, and I'll give some samples on that. Then we ask empowering questions, and that generates in our mind, it's sort of like a search engine in our mind, like a Google search engine. It generates then thoughts, or and it looks for solutions, and then we end up having good feelings, positive feelings. We need that lead to good actions. Good actions lead to good results, and they reinforce our true beliefs. Now, as an example, if I have money worries, and this is how I approach it, it's sort of like a canary in the coal mine for me. When I have negative feelings about something, for example, I have money worries. Let's say a bill comes in that I didn't expect, and I'm thinking, oh my, what's going to happen now? What is that worry then based on? The worry is based on the belief here at the bottom that there may not be enough, that I will be running out of money. And so I asked my question, well, when I run out of money, what if I lose it all? What if I lose the house? What if my wife runs away from me? Whatever, I go bankrupt. And then that makes me feel really worried about money. And so I hold back. I'm not going to spend any money. I'm not going to do anything. I'm not very active. As a result, I'm sort of fatigued anyway, mentally and emotionally. So I don't do much or withhold. Nothing gets produced. And then that reinforces, of course, then the fear that I may run out of money. But if we take a different approach, if I say, which is a more empowering, a true belief, I will always have enough. Why can I say I have always had enough? Well, because I know I've always had enough. I'm still here. I have survived this far. That means I always have enough. So if I start with the belief, I always have enough, no matter what, even if I have to declare bankruptcy at one point, I will always have enough. I'll get through it. Most wealthy people have gone through bankruptcy at one time in their life, But what this belief does, it generates empowering questions like, what is it within my power to do? That generates answers. Well, I can serve, I can contribute, I can do things. That gives us peace of mind and confidence. And then based on having peace of mind and confidence, that generates a high level of mental and emotional energy. We do our part, we do the best we can, we get the blessings, the good results, and that again reinforces our belief that we will always have enough. Another example is if people deal with anxiety or depression, again, it's sort of like the canary in the coal mine for me. If I'm depressed or anxious about something, what is that based on? Well, we have doubts. We think, oh, all is vanity anyway. What's the use? Then we ask ourselves the question, well, what is wrong? We focus on what is wrong, what I don't have. And then we think about, yeah, all these things are wrong. All these things I don't have. And that generates those negative feelings. And we end up crawling under a blanket. We don't do anything. We become very inactive and we get even more depressed. And then that reinforces all our doubts and negative beliefs. Another example, but then how do we overcome that? How do we replace that negative belief or those anxious thoughts? It's about starting with gratitude. If we focus on what we do have, if we're grateful for everything what we do have, then that changes everything. Forget who said it initially, that the depth of or the height of our joy is determined by the depth of our gratitude. And if we remember that, even if it takes us 25 things to write down in the morning that we're grateful for to generate that joy, it's well worth it. If it takes us 5 minutes to write down 25 things we're grateful for, then we can really move forward and have much more joy in our life. And so again, when we ask ourselves, what can I be grateful for? We come up with a list of things that we are grateful for. We can focus on what we have and not what we don't have, and that generates joy. And when we have more joy, we can serve and create with enthusiasm, and we can be a light to other people and encouragement to other people. One more thing and that is specifically maybe if you're calling in and you want to be a high performer, you want to really do well in 2021. Many of us are often a bit stressed out because we think unless we do it, we are very responsible people. We want to get everything done. We want to take charge of everything. And as we said in the beginning, we want to have this control and we think it's all up to us. And we believe that there's not enough time. There's not enough time in the day. I can't get it all done. So that generates the disempowering question. What if it doesn't get done? Well, I will lose out. So that gives me the feeling of overwhelm and stress. And then we take poor action, we get sloppy, we hurry. And in the process, sometimes we hurt relationships. We just brush over other people, their concerns, we ignore them, and it's hurting their relationships. So we get exhausted in the process. Often, whatever we do does not get done very well because we're hurried and we cut corners, and we get relationships hurt in the process. So that doesn't serve us very well. We can take the other approach, replace that belief with, I will always have enough time, resources, and support. What I meant to do, what I meant to get done today, I will get done. I will have what it will take. Then we can ask ourselves the empowering question, what matters most today? Then we can focus as a result on our priorities. Then we have some calm energy. We work well patiently. We produce good work, and nobody gets hurt in the process. And that goes back exactly to what Don was saying earlier there about letting go of control is one of those things. Yeah, it's not all up to us. We will get it done, and we will get the support from other people. Nobody gets hurt in the process. Now, sometimes we may have all the right beliefs and still things don't go so well. That's something we talked about earlier as well. What do we do? And Don pointed out, well, I'm looking at it as a learning process. So what can I learn from the situation when I'm dealing with a setback or a failure? And that's something that's a very, very good approach. I'm really glad you brought that up. And it can also mean a redirection towards something better. I remember years ago, decades ago, I was dating this girl, and I was so upset and frustrated that she broke up with me. Well, I'm so glad in hindsight that she did. I'm so glad, because I would not have been able to marry the one that I'm married with now, have been married with, and that has turned out to be a much, much better fit. It can be sometimes a redirection towards something better, or it could be a correction. Maybe we've been doing something wrong for a long time. Maybe we've not been paying attention to our health for a long time, and then something comes up and it moves us in the right direction. We can be very frustrated about it, or say, okay, I'm taking the correction here. For example, if somebody suffers diabetes and as a result loses a leg, that's a major, major, major correction. And we can decide to take it, or we can decide not to take the correction. Unfortunately, I know somebody who did not take the correction, continued not to take care of his diabetes, and ended up dying very prematurely. So let's look at every setback. Okay, there's a correction. It's a blessing in disguise. Or it's a setup for something new. When I lost my job in the corporate world, at first I was upset, but then I realized I was liberated. I was liberated to do something that I really enjoy doing, and that's this stuff, writing and coaching, and nothing invigorates me more than doing that. So even if it looks like a setback, even if it looks like a failure in the short term, in the moment, that does not necessarily mean that it can't be a blessing or interpret it that way, and that we can't look at it as a learning experience, as Don had mentioned earlier. So those are the slides I wanted to share. And I would like to get back a little bit more to the interactive part here about asking the questions about fears. What are some of the fears and worries in my life that I have not let go of? Can you think of something?
Oh gosh, a list. I used to tell myself the story, because that's what the fear is. It's planting doubt within myself. Am I ready? Am I ready to serve? Oh, I just need to do one more thing before I'm ready. And what I'm realizing is, and I would also be like, if I'm not completely buttoned up and figured everything out before I roll it out, then I'm going to fail. But I've realized that I let go of that fear, or I kind of lean into it and I go with it. If I don't need to figure everything out, I need to just figure out the first part of what I need to do. I'm going to learn something as I experience it. I may tact another way. So if I spend all of that time worrying about what's going to happen, I'm not actually experiencing it. So the fear is becoming part of the experience. And so instead of calling it fear, I call it the curiosity. I call it something else. And I tell myself the story of how this isn't fear, this is courage. This is what it looks like. This is, I'm letting myself feel. And so I've replaced fear with feel.
Feel. That's an awesome phrase. Fear with feel.
Mm-hmm.
You know what? You gave me an epiphany just right now. Came up with another phrase just now as you were talking. Perfectionism is a form of fear,
It absolutely is.
isn't it?
It is. And
You were saying, why did you feel like you had to everything buttoned up? Was there fear behind it?
Yeah, well, typically if a lot of times with women, you're just bred that way where everything needs to be perfect. You need to serve, but it needs to be in a certain way. And you have to just break down all of those barriers. Those do not pertain. We're people, and you have to unlearn. You have to unlearn a lot of things in life. But I'll share a little story with you. We were doing a road trip going to Sedona, and then we went to the Grand Canyon, and it was great. And I took I have a little dog, he's about 8 pounds. And so we get to the rim of the Grand Canyon, and it's just huge and magnificent. And we've got all of our photo gear. And then my husband's like, okay, let's hike down in there. And I was like, oh, but it's sunset. And he goes, yeah, I know. I want to do a sunset time lapse. And I'm like, but it's going to be dark if I have to come back up. I'm like already thinking. And I said, screw it. I have a flashlight. I have the ability to climb out. I'm with someone that I trust. And I went down in that canyon and we set up our equipment and we watched the sunset. And when it came time for us to hike up through the darkness, it did not feel like darkness. But had I let my fear keep me at the top of the ridge, I would have never experienced that. I would have never had that, our experience together of sharing it and the photography that we did and the adventure that we did, but also, the fear of heights that I had. I was just like, I'm just going for it. Millions of people have hiked down this canyon and they have all survived. So I just kind of let it go and I went into feel. And I was a little scared when I was hiking down, but ideally it was the most amazing feeling. It was, euphoric. You just have to go with it.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I hiked it myself a couple of times, but I always left at 6 o'clock in the morning. So there was enough time to get back up yeah, on that day. That's awesome. That's great. That's great. Wonderful. So are there still fears that you're dealing with that are hard for you to let go of? And what is keeping you from letting them go?
A lot of times fear is wrapped around what if the outcome isn't the one that I want. And so that goes back to control. You really can't control that. And if someone was meant to not be in your life, or if something was meant to happen that you're not going to have this job, there's nothing that you're going to do that's going to save it or control it. That's going to, there might be some things that you can do, but ideally, if someone else is set on an action, it's going to be taken anyway. And so there's not really fearing it. It might fear that it might hurt, fear that there might be change, but that's part of it as well. and you should anticipate what that might be so you can prepare yourself for what it could be, or prepare yourself for a better outcome, and participate in it. So instead of being fearful and shutting down, I say lean in, go for it, experience it, because you might be very surprised sometimes when you think something's happening, that it's actually not happening at all. And
Oh,
and once you say, hey, well, I thought that you were really, I thought I hurt you by something that I said. And they're like, oh, really? I don't even remember what you said. So there's instances like
right.
that where you're just like, you have to get outside of your head and outside of your doubt and your fear so you can actually be open to the experience that you're really meant to have.
Right. Yeah, that's awesome. Um, have you found situations where you were fearful of something, and you felt like you should hold on to that fear for some reason?
Yes, I have. I have. And there are cases where I did hold on to it and I can't go back and revisit what that was. And then there's other places where I've just let go of it.
Mhm.
And even though the outcome may have been hurtful at that time, and you need to grieve and move through that, ultimately you're better. Ultimately, you're a better person for it. Ultimately, that experience carries forward. Ultimately, there's more what I would call compassion and empathy around that as you move forward in your next experience. So that's why I say fear should be replaced with feel, because if you
Yeah,
allow yourself to feel it, you'll be less fearful of what the outcome's going to be. You're not
yeah,
alone in it.
yeah. That's awesome. Um, one thing that that I sometimes had about being anxious,
Hmm.
um, the way I justified my anxiety, or keeping it or maintaining a level of anxiety, was I thought this is helping me to stay on my toes. That was my excuse, especially
Hmm.
when it related to work. You know,
Hmm.
if I don't feel a sense of, if I don't have a sense of anxiety, I may be too relaxed about the situation and I may not be on my toes enough. Um, but it's not a very energizing kind of an approach at
Hmm.
all, you
No,
know.
it's
And
exhausting. It's
it's
exhausting.
very exhausting.
Um,
Yeah.
are there any techniques or things that you do when you feel yourself in your anxious moment that how do you kind of, some people do tapping, some people set reminders or triggers for when you feel that moment happening, your anxious moment. What do you tell yourself?
That is something, what I have gone through when I showed those slides.
Hmm.
uh, Again, to go back to that a little bit, I see it, okay, if I feel anxious, I said, okay, canary in the coal mine. What is this based on? Why are you anxious now? I found myself, let's say, my wife would spend money on something where I felt like that wasn't really necessary or something like that.
Hmm.
Um, and I'd have this gut feel in a moment, it's based on a fear that we're going to run out of money.
Hmm.
Or I get an unexpected bill. I had, like, a car repair is needed all of a sudden. That's
Hmm.
what was not expected. And it used to give me like this little punch in the gut.
Hmm.
And now I just say, it'll it'll be fine. I will have enough. I will
Exactly.
generate money. It's, and I just, for me, uh, personally, that's the one that I have used.
Hmm.
I must say, not very. Has only been a few months that I've come to the realization that it's a canary in the coal mine for false or limiting beliefs.
Hmm.
And then I go there, and immediately the moment it comes up, I say, okay, what's this based on? I think about it, and then I can move forward. Then I can
Right.
let it go, because
That's
what it
wonderful.
does, I mean, because what it does to me, it distracts me. I mean, I was actually talking to my own coach, and I had a situation with um, that unfortunately has gotten to a situation where we had to hire a lawyer, and it could go many different directions as far as the outcome of a particular business deal. And so my coach said, "So you haven't let it go?"
Mm-hmm.
And I said, "What do you mean?" Oh, no, the way he put it, he said, "You haven't turned it over." He knows I'm a person of faith. He himself is a person of faith as well. So
Mm-hmm.
you haven't turned it over, have you? I said, I guess I haven't. He said, because if you constantly think about it and it distracts you from doing what you're
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be doing, like working on your coaching business and finishing up your second book, those
Mm-hmm.
things are what you really want to do and what you're meant to do. But if you don't have enough focus and energy to get it done, it's because your mind is somewhere else. And your
I love
mind is somewhere else because you haven't turned it over.
I love the way that you position that. You haven't given it over yet. I've gotten to the practice where I will write it down in my journal. But then what I started to do was for things that I really couldn't let go of, I would write it down and put it in my wallet. And every once in a while, I would open it up and read it like a fortune cookie. And I would say, "Gosh, is that still a thing for you?" And one
Yeah.
day I just took it out of my wallet and I burnt it, and then it's gone, and I just let it go. And it was a symbolism that really helped me kind of move past this barrier that I set up for myself, this limiting belief that I've set up, or this story that I have told. And so now, with the year coming to an end and opportunity for you to look towards the future, I encourage people to let it go, just to start to think about what the positive things are that we can do, and to kind of come as your best self. This is it. This is our opportunity here. So that's how I see things as well.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much. Really appreciate you participating. Um, as we come to an end, this hour has gone by so fast, and I really, have enjoyed it. And I'm hoping that others, can enjoy it as well as they will get the recording. I just want to mention it before we stop the recording. I want to mention that I have a couple of programs here.
Mm-hmm.
One is I encourage everybody to get the book, Letting Go Saved My Life.
Mm-hmm.
It is available either on my website, which is Carried on Eagle's Wings, and I will send that out. I will send out the links with an email following this to all those who have registered. And then I have decided to start a weekly coaching program. 2021 weekly. So it's, you can find out about it on carriedoneagleswings.com/2021 weekly intro. And what I will start doing in the 1st of February on a Monday morning at 6 o'clock. So every Monday morning at 6 o'clock, this is Eastern Standard Time. I may have to do another one for other time zones. We'll find out how this one goes. And this will be Monday morning, 6 o'clock every week for all those high performers who want to start the week right. And we will go through the high performance habits and the pillars of high performance. Those will be discussed, and it will be every Monday morning at 6 o'clock. And also, as for those people who'd like to work on their personal and spiritual development, I actually have another coaching program, and that starts every Sunday morning at 8 o'clock. And it's going to be based on the new book, on my second book that I wrote, which is still in the editing process, but it will be based on the title of the book, and the title of the seminar will be Coached by the Bible. So this will be focusing on personal and spiritual development, and I think it's going to be of value to everybody. That is going to be a free seminar. The other one, the weekly high performance coaching, you can find out that will be a paid seminar. You can buy a subscription. That you will find the details on my website. And Yeah, that's basically what I wanted to mention. Uh, by the way, the book is available on my website, and so is a CD. We got a CD version on it
Oh,
as well
nice.
if you just want to listen to that. But on Amazon, it's also available, the book worldwide, because I only ship within US, but on Amazon, it's available worldwide. And also we have audio version and a Kindle version. And so you can consume it in whichever way you like. And I hope it will help you dig a little bit deeper into this letting go. And so great for today. That's all we have for today. Tomorrow we will talk about ego. That is from the spectrum of pride all the way to low self-esteem. We'll cover the whole range of ego, letting go of that, and also letting go of habits which don't serve us. So those will be the topics we'll be discussing tomorrow. So look forward to having you on there, or hopefully this will be helping you in letting go of this year that wasn't all so smooth for everybody, and that will help you to get off to a really good start in the next year. Take care, be well, and thank you again so much for listening and watching and participating.
Thanks.
So I will stop the recording, and